Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Inside Scoop. This is a loss prevention magazine podcast, and we talk to all different kinds of people. We have some of our favorite solution providers on today, though. So we have folks from Zebra, and we're going to talk about some new things. They're going to educate me on what they're doing over at Zebra because I can be kind of clueless. I haven't been in retail in a long time, so they got to bring me up to speed. But today we have Scott Pethuyne and Kayla Popow with me, right? Popow, did I say that right?
Popow, yes.
Popow, dang it, I knew I was going to say it wrong. That's okay. It's all right. We may edit that later. But you guys are going to talk to me for a little bit about what's happening at Zebra. But first, can you introduce yourselves?
Absolutely. So I'm Caleb Popow, and I'm the product manager for Actionable Intelligence. And it's an analytics solution, or in the loss prevention world, you could think of it as an EBR solution that sits within our software suite within Zebra that we call the Workcloud. So this allows an individual to drive efficiency and find bad things that are happening within your organization from a data standpoint. And I have the privilege to work with Scott Pethuyne from the sales side of our application.
Yep. So I'm Scott Pethuyne. I'm on the solutions consulting team, which is a part of the sales organization. So I spend my days and weeks talking to retailers, talking to customers about where they're seeing challenges within both register data, inventory data, all throughout the operations of the business. And so I support our actionable intelligence solution that Caleb was just talking about, and also our inventory visibility solution. So that's a self-directed inventory and cycle counting application as well. So really kind of drawing on my experience as a former LP guy and kind of bringing that to customers on a day in, day out basis. So happy to be able to get a chance to chat with you guys today.
Awesome. And you've been in the industry a long time, I think both of you. Remind me again, not to date anyone, but
Yeah, I've within the loss prevention world specifically, about 11 years, and then also in the government space, about 4 years.
Yep. Then I'd probably get into 17, 18 years because I was retail and then moved to this role. So
yeah. Yeah. And I know you guys have spent a long time working with clients and you have your ear to the ground because you work closely with clients. So before we get into the products that I want to dig into a little bit, talk to me about what is the day-to-day life like right now for LP folks who are trying to consume all of the data that's headed their way. What is that like?
yeah, I mean, I'm talking to folks all the time. A lot, it stopped being the problem a long time ago of not having enough data. And
Yeah.
now oftentimes it's kind of the opposite, which is like, hey, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of systems that consume, or I could get that information out of, but it's like, it's over here or it's in this system. And none of those things like do a great job of making sure that people are being made aware of and fixing when stuff is going wrong. So I feel like a lot of what I've been hearing recently is, well, and the other thing too is like everybody listening to this knows, but nobody has like way bigger teams or more time to get stuff done
Nope.
these days. So it's really kind of how do we cut through the clutter? How do you serve up the most important stuff so that my folks know where and when and what to go kind of look through. There are some people who are still in kind of the data mining, but they're kind of more nerdy like me. They're like, I want to really dig in and get into the nuts and bolts of everything. And most of the time it's, hey, I've got 100 other things to do. I don't have the time to sit and dig and figure out whether anything's wrong. Just kind of need to know. So I feel like that is what I hear the most about today is just kind of how do we make it so that we can be more push versus pull oriented and really kind of be able to kind of stay mobile and active.
Right. So Caleb, as Scott was just talking, to think about, the data, it's flowing in, there's no shortage of it, and it's more complex too. So how does Zebra's product, Workcloud Actionable Intelligence, sort of simplify this complex data that's flowing in?
Absolutely. So we briefly touched on this on the last podcast in February, where we talked about how, yes, the data volume is exploding, right? It's growing exponentially, it seems like every year. And as we roll out more solutions, specifically heavy with AI, data creation is on a whole new level. So when we looked at actionable intelligence, we had to think of it from almost from a new lens. And we said, okay, we're going to completely redesign the application from the ground up, completely cloud native to support high volume data. And so what we mean by that is now the application is designed, look and feel is so that you can process almost any volume of data that you need to solve the various problems that you're facing within seconds, right? So what used to take 40 minutes to run, a 200 gigabyte query now takes 15 seconds, right? Definitely an exponential increase in compute power was requested by the market to handle this larger set of data. But beyond that, we took it to a whole nother level and said, it's one thing to provide an application that yes allows you to bring in whatever data you want. It does it with speed, and it allows you to run deep learning, whether on demand or scheduled. That was definitely a request by the market. But then we said there has to be another way where a user can start to manipulate this data from a much more user-friendly perspective, right? And the reason why I say that is because we all came from the loss prevention world, and one of those things that happens is you identify a problem and you go to solve it. And you're probably going to sit down with an associate who says, okay, yes, I did something wrong, and here's how I did it. Well, that conversation becomes like a roadmap of how the bad activity was taking place. And then you have the challenge of then going back and recreating that roadmap and pulling all the data so that you can present it to your HR, you can present it to law enforcement, and then they have to see the same picture that you did while interviewing that associate. Right. And so we said, okay, is there a way to actually visualize that and allow someone to kind of create that story almost actually on demand, but from their own perspective? And so we're actually in a position where we're about to release a feature within our analytics studio for actionable intelligence. And we call this feature the canvas. And this canvas allows you to create this story as you envision it in your mind, but more importantly, allows you to now solve multi-step problems, and you're no longer restricted based on your ability to fit a specific data set within a single window, like you are in traditional analytics applications. It can be as short or as long or as complex of a diagram as you want it to be. So truly taking the guardrails off of the problems you can solve. And really, there's no more levels of complexity that are too grand to solve, right? It's more about if you have a few minutes, you can solve almost any problem that you can imagine.
So let me repeat this back to you so I'm making sure I understand. So your EBR tool, which is the Workcloud Actionable Intelligence, you can take this feature now that's called Canvas and create a visual,
Mhm.
right? And so if I've gotten working on my case, I've wrapped it up, I go back now, I can build a visual that I can then take and present to others to help them understand better what happened. Am I hearing that right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
If you wanted to present it that way, you absolutely could from a visual perspective.
Okay.
But also, because it is from a visual perspective, you can now create a chain of events that you've never been able to create before, right? And I think, right, Scott can definitely give a quick good examples of what some of those situations look like. But think of it this way. From the loss prevention perspective, historically, we've been tied to the point of sale. But what if the problem I'm trying to solve also involves inventory data, also involves IoT or RFID? And you need to have all of these different data sets interacting in this story in order to get to the result that you're looking for. So this is what Canvas allows you to do is not just present it in a meaningful way so that others who are unfamiliar with what you're doing can visually understand.
Mhm.
But the act of this visual creation allows you to now solve problems that you've never been able to solve before because now all these queries are linked together.
Okay. So Scott, with this software or this feature within, can I be more proactive? Would I be able to do that step before my case is wrapped up?
Yeah. So one of the examples, or something that's traditionally super common, right, is looking at voids. So line voids,
Okay.
right? People deleting stuff off the transaction when they're ringing the register. A lot of times you're kind of restricted, right? One report, and you can see who's got more or less of them, and maybe you can get some statistical comparisons and things like that, right? But pretty much you're kind of looking at, hey, I've got a discrete time frame in front of me, and I'm looking at a person's activity and what they've been doing. And if I see enough information there and then I dig in and verify some of this stuff, then I can get a really good idea of, yeah, they're definitely stealing, right? They're doing that, or they're doing the no sales after or whatever. And then maybe one of the things you might do when you go to that store to have that conversation is, you know what, I might show up an hour early and I might just go count some of those products. I might just see, hey, do we really have as many as we thought we did? Because they avoided this stuff, right? It's not really here anymore. Customer walked away with it. They took the cash. So I'm going to double check based on the inventory count, right? It's not something that we would be able to traditionally reconcile ahead of time.
Mhm.
So with one of the things that you could do in Canvas now is essentially make your first report or bubble or look at the data or view or however you want to envision it. You make that first report essentially, okay, I'm going to start building some like a risk profile of my products and say, let me see all the products that were voided this week and just show me all those products, right? Because there's some risk there, right? Maybe it was an accident or maybe it was intentional, but avoid is something that's interesting, right?
Right.
And then as the second step, you might say, okay, now let me take all of those voided products and let's put that up against my inventory adjustments for the week afterwards and say, okay, if this was voided last week and then the following week, then we saw that it was negatively adjusted. Now we're seeing an indicator of shrink. So we've got kind of two risk elements happening, right? Risky transaction and risk showing up in the inventory data. So at that point, you've now kind of really started to narrow the focus down. You kind of did your inventory count ahead of time. And now you've got this list of products that are fairly risky. And then I can link that through and say, who are the cashiers that are responsible for actually ringing those transactions in the first place? Because now we know we have really risky products. And now we know we have the people that are responsible for those transactions. And so it zooms me in closer to the pin ahead of time versus having to say, oh, I wonder, and do some of the other, double verifications and things like that that we used to do. And it's the kind of thing that, I mean, we probably all did this at some point, right? Which is like, I might be able to get all this data and get all that data and export them all out and VLOOKUP them together or whatever. But now it's really straightforward. This is the kind of thing that, if I had it, if I had access to this when I was doing this job on the retailer side, I would have been very grateful because I think it's going to save a lot of people a lot of time, and it's going to allow them to build things without like a degree or being a database administrator or whatever. It's really just kind of drag and drop, put the stuff together, and then let's see how it answers the question.
Yeah. So is that sort of the difference maker between this product and other folks out there in the arena? Is it that everything's sort of like in a one-stop shop? Is it it's just easier to grab the data? Like what makes this different?
For sure. So one of the beauties of our new application is what we call democratized data, right? In the sense that we don't care where the data comes from or really what the underlying purpose of the data is. And the reason B is because at Zebra, right, we have what's called the modern store. And the modern store basically allows a retailer to run their entire operation off of a Zebra portfolio. And so in order to support that, we have to be very flexible. And so
Mhm.
one of the cool things of, in this case, right, think of it of an EBR solution. In the loss prevention world, the data you need or the data you're going to request tomorrow, uh, right, it has to be fed into a solution that can handle it. And so from that perspective, we don't care where the data comes from. We don't care what the underlying purpose is, right? Whether that's alarm data or IoT, right? Something new is going to come up into the market tomorrow, and you will need a place to send that data to then solve a challenge. And actionable intelligence can definitely consume that data. But in this perspective, Canvas allows you to then visualize that and then connect it so you can start solving challenges that you've never been able to solve before. Or maybe you solved it before, but you had to first go to a person from IT to get a random data set that you had first had to discover if it even existed. And then
Mhm.
you had to go to a BI analyst and say, "Hey, can you make these things work together?" And then you had to then interpret it for your boss. Well, in this case, as long as the data is being fed into our application, you the single user can create this workflow all by yourself.
So we always talk about scalability, right, in this industry, and I think that lines up perfectly with it because there's all these new data flows coming in, especially with AI. Operations, is dabbling in AI, and marketing teams. Um, to me, you have to have a solution that can ingest all
Mhm.
of these new, and it has to be scalable, right? Do you think that this is a product that's gonna live like for years because it's so scalable? Like, what do you think?
Absolutely. And we would say, right, we are the forefront in terms of positioning of scalability.
Mhm.
Right, don't get me wrong, there are still point solutions in the marketplace, right? And yes, if you're looking just for a traditional loss prevention EBR solution, there's a couple different options out there. But we know from the last decade that loss prevention is definitely changing, right? And as loss prevention starts to adopt more of the end-to-end understanding of retail shrink and understanding that sales is equally important as preventing a unit loss, as that transition starts to take hold within an organization, more and more players within that organization are coming to the table and they're saying, oh, wow, I didn't realize that there was a solution that could do this, right? I didn't realize there was a solution that could help me understand product sell through or product prediction modeling for the merchants, right? And so now it becomes a solution that many people are saying, I can benefit from that. And if many people can benefit from that, then your whole organization is now going to benefit from that. Scott, do
Right.
you have any additional opinions on that?
The one thing that I totally agree is just the only thing that I would add is that when we think about like the scalability of it, certainly from the data in side, it becomes necessary for all the reasons that Caleb and you, Stephanie, were just talking about, right? Which is there's lots of data sources, and especially then as other parties across the organization start to realize the power of, well, wait a second, what if I could leverage that better? What if I could draw insights out of it more effectively? The thing that comes to mind a lot of times for me in the scalability conversation is kind of the reason why we have actionable in the name of the solution, which is it also has to be scalable on the output side of the application, which means, okay, who is going to receive the information out of this thing and what are they going to be able to do with that? And that's one of the things that I think also makes the solution kind of different is we really focus on that sort of democratized data idea being regardless of the complexity that resides in the back end of how we get the data, how we run a model or find an anomaly, for the end user, whether that's an investigator or whether that's a store manager or department manager, they need to know what's going on and what do I need to do about it. That's
Mhm.
it. Don't really care if you did anomaly detection or neural networks or whatever. So that's one of the things that I think is a huge strength is we focus really on being able to say, and it's super common, by the way, to just start with like, hey, we know exception reporting works around the transaction fraud space, right? So let's start there. Perfect. We'll start there and we'll cross that off and we'll know that we've got that under control. But then what? When we feel like, all right, yeah, the voids aren't as crazy, there's not as much low hanging fruit. It's like, then what do you do? Well, there's probably a lot more people accidentally voiding stuff or thinking this is the right way to do it than there are taking cash out of the register. So how do we turn our attention to that and get those kinds of alerts and insights in the hands of those people? So that's one of the places where I think, and as we talk, when you talk to our customers as well, it's like looking at those, when you start to see the big KPIs being reduced, it's like, it's not just, hey, we had X amount of cases this year, but it's, we reduced our overall voids or our overall
Yeah.
discounts by a lot of money. Is like, oh, that's changing behavior. That's not picking off little incidents here and there, which again, it's not to discount the importance of that. I totally understand and acknowledge how important those things are to resolve. But you think about that overall profitability message as you're trying to, be the good steward to the business and be a partner and all that kind of stuff. That's where, that output scalability, I think, really comes into play, because it's like, we could send this to anybody. They don't have to know anything about data, because we'll just tell them exactly what's going on and what to do.
Yeah, I mean, the more you can simplify it, just make it easy to consume, like you mentioned, a store manager or even the associate level, if they can clearly see, oh, I need to go do training at the front end, boom, I can go check it off my list, just make it easy. Speaking of that, on the front end, like what kind of skill level do I need to have as an analyst to use the tool? Do I need to be able to be a programmer? Like, what do I have to do?
So the good thing about our canvas is we call it what was traditionally called a no-code solution, meaning that you don't need any knowledge of programming or what programming could be or should be or what it looks like. No, as long as you can click a few buttons, connect a few objects, right? You can create now multi-step solutions to solve multi-step challenges. So we made it pretty easy in the sense that anyone today, yes, who navigates a website, you can definitely click a few buttons within our application and now get insight that you've never seen before.
I love it. So is that pretty much the setup? Is it a tool that resides at the home office and there's analysts, maybe multiple people using it? Is that kind of what your retailers are doing with it?
So we're one of the unique solutions where customers do not just buy us because of traditional EBR perspectives, or the customers who are more advanced and doing multi-model approaches like inventory and POS and accounting data. Our customers are very forward thinking in the perspective that, yes, I've got a solution that allows me to uh, alert on when bad things are happening, right? That'll always be classic EBR, allowing for the data exploration, looking at receipts. But then the next step is actually automating that, right? And then that's where our solution starts to deviate from the rest of the market in the sense that when we automate that process and then create a task, and a task is, right, the outputs of when that bad thing is identified, we then provide prescriptive actions in terms of how that end user can then solve that difficulty that the business is facing. And we have the ability to send that alert to the person who is most capable of solving that problem. And that is generally an associate at the store level, closest, right, literally closest to the inventory product, closest to the shelf, or closest to the point of sale. And we can send it to them directly to their mobile device, whether it's a Zebra device or another handheld, through a task management application even, right? And so, right, one of our biggest customers, right, sends over 10,000 alerts to that local associate who can solve the problem every week. And that
Mhm.
associate is seeing it on a device and a task management application that they see every single day. So they have no knowledge that, hey, there's this actionable intelligence running behind the scenes that looks for this anomalous data. They're just seeing it as a task that they need to complete every day when they walk into the store. And so it's flexible from that perspective in the sense that, right, our end user doesn't need to have any knowledge of analytics, doesn't need to even have any knowledge of our solution, right? As
Mhm.
long as the customer has a couple of admins or even wants to hire us to essentially be their admin, right? We can create alerts in their application, create continuous monitoring of various activities happening within their business, right? Profit erosion activities. And then we can send the alert to the person most capable of solving that problem. But more importantly, our solution, again, doesn't stop there, right? We come back around full circle to allow the customer to then understand the ROI impact of that automated query, right? And so if you have an automated query that is looking for phantom inventory, you get definitely profit erosion right there,
Mhm.
right? That customer can then understand the impact of the associates actioning on those alerts and it's a physical dollar amount, right? So that manager, that admin, right, the director, vice president can be very confident when they have to go back to their board, and their board says, are you making a difference in our locations? They can say, yes, here's $30 million worth of difference that I've made, and I can prove it because I've got all the data points to show that my associates actioned on those alerts that were problematic for that location. And if we're doing that, then at the end of the day, we're giving the customer a better shopping experience.
Yeah, I love it. There's an instant feedback loop, right? And I think in the past, the olden days, there was this bottleneck of the information. You'd have a gatekeeper sitting on it, and they would decide what was important. And I think the way that you're speaking about it, it makes much more sense. It's happening quickly. Like you can address these issues quickly instead of waiting for it to really boil over.
Absolutely,
So,
yes.
yeah. So, Scott, are you going to be at RILA?
Yes, I will be there.
All right. So what's happening with Zebra at RILA? Do you guys have anything cool happening with your booth?
We do, yeah. So it's actually it's exciting times in the Zebra booth. We're rolling out a new booth layout, and as a part of that, we are going to be. So you may have heard Caleb reference the modern store framework earlier, and anybody who's been by our big Zebra booth at NRF Big Show may have seen we have like this kind of walkthrough, kind of day in the life, multi-story presentation that we call the modern store. That really shows how you can kind of work through across the entire Zebra portfolio, hardware, software, all that different kinds of stuff. And it's a really cool kind of demo that really walks through a bunch of different things. But it's obviously kind of more generic, more operational. It's great for the NRF Big Show, but it's maybe not as applicable when we think about the specific LP AP crowd that's going to be at a RILA and at an NRF Protect. And so we're going to roll out in that new booth. Part of it is to have kind of the loss prevention modern store. So essentially being able to kind of tell that story end to end, but really focusing on the things that the LPAP professional is more interested in, right? So let's capture inaccurate inventory. Let's alert to things like inventory inaccuracy and see what that looks like where we deliver that alert and the associate works through it. And now what about at the front end? Is there anything that we can help at, Zebra makes a lot of scanning technology and things like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how can we integrate all these different tools together in a way that we can help not only the business as a whole, right, profitability wise, but how are we going to help tackle the ORC challenges? How are we going to tackle that, both the sales and the loss side of the shrink equation? It's a pretty neat sort of cohesive story that kind of shows Zebra's power or size as an organization to bring several different solutions together and make something that I think the crowd will find really neat. So I would encourage anybody that's going to be there, please swing by and check it out because it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, you guys, you do a great booth. I'm always impressed because again, 30 years ago, Zebra was a POS tool, right? Scanners. You're so much more than that. I mean, I was blown away with, RFID and AI, at the checkout, like just amazing what you guys are into. And we just talked about EBR, right? So I hope folks do stop by and see your booth because I think they'll be blown away with how much that you're into and just investing into with your R&D is awesome. So,
yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's really it's just kind of like the strategic evolution of the organization, right? Because all of that scanning and RFID and all of those things, and it's all generating data anyways. So now how can we then take that information and do smart things with it? Or how do we get tasks to employees that need to be able to do things? Or how do we help you plan your timekeeping, your labor schedules and things? I mean, there's lots of different avenues and ways that kind of Zebra has grown recently that candidly maybe not everybody is super aware of, but please if anybody wants to swing by, we certainly are happy to chit chat about it.
Yeah, and zebras can change their stripes evidently.
That's right. I got my buddy right here. Yep.
Stop by.
So
I'm sure you guys will have some of those at the booth too for those looking for some swag.
They're pretty pop. Yeah, if you got a dog or a kid, those are probably the two most common places where those zebras end up. But yeah, they're very popular.
Nice, very nice. Caleb, any last thoughts on RILA or anything else?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely encourage everyone to stop by the booth. You can absolutely see a demo of exactly what we just talked about, the Analytics Studio and the Canvas functionality, and you can see it for yourself, right? And that'll be pretty cool to see live in person. Yeah, we are very excited for this RILA, and we look forward to seeing everybody.
Awesome. We'll see you guys in DC, and thank you again for the chat, and we'll see you down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.